Looks like we have, oh, I don't know if that means we're on.
I just saw it
Okay.
said the broadcast is live.
Okay. All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome and thanks for watching and listening to us. We're live on LinkedIn. My name is Edie Summers, and I'm super excited to have one of my fellow LinkedIn, colleagues that I met not too long ago, Gregg Gonzales. Gregg, am I saying your name correctly?
You
I
said
should
it
ask
great.
you how to say your name.
Sure.
It's Gregg is amazing, and he's the founder of the SpeakEasy Method. And Gregg, would you care to share with us a little bit more what that's all about?
Well, I mean, thank you for having me first, Edie. And, in thinking about how to describe the Speakeasy Method, I think the first thing I have to preface it by is that I have been struggling with how to describe it because it takes on many different layers, so I think of it as like an onion where there's different layers to it to get to the root core of it. And I think the simplest way to explain that core is that it is about kindness through what I call the 3 C's of the Speakeasy Method, which I can go into more detail here, which are compassion, curiosity, and conversation. And I've developed this method of utilizing this idea of spreading kindness through storytelling. And that when you apply each of these 3 pieces and give somebody that space to share a little bit about themselves, it creates story. It creates a passageway for people to tap into themselves in a very powerful, authentic, and insightful way that after really years and years of experimenting with just asking people questions and providing that space, that I thought to myself, there's something here. There's something about when people are given that opportunity to speak, that magic comes out. And I just decided to do something with that. And I use that formula to help people write books. I've used it to help people create screenplays, TED Talks, really just anything that they want to share in terms of a story to others that utilizes their voice has been really the focal point of what this work has been about. But really, at the end of the day, it's about that act of kindness to give to people that, for me, helps with mental immunity and strengthening the way people think about themselves, the way they feel about themselves. So I see this as a tool to help with mental health, to help strengthen mental health, which obviously is going to affect physical health. So I just think that for me, this is a wellness program on top of a story production entity. So that's where I mean, there's a lot of layers to it, but at the end of the day, it's about kindness to give to others and incorporating those 3 C's to help people tell and share their story.
And I love, and so for anyone who's new, learning about you, so Gregg, for anyone listening, whether it's live or to the replay, Gregg helps people bring their stories to life, and I would say find their voices, and then, but obviously so much more, like you were just sharing. So Gregg, do you mind telling us a little bit about your backstory, like what brought you to helping people how you do today?
Sure. So I spent the last 20 plus years within the field of wellness, primarily in spas, and I was a licensed massage therapist, had my own practice. I've managed corporate spas, and you would just think, being in that environment, that you kind of just become mindful and you become connected, and it just is a very Zen way of living and being. And what I found is that it was really anything but at times. I mean, there were moments where, sure, you had the peace and the serenity and the connection to others, but I wasn't truly as connected to the work and really just what it meant to be in wellness while I was doing it for over 2 decades. It wasn't until that my career came to an end as a massage therapist, after wearing my wrists down and having unsuccessful surgeries to try and repair my hands to be able to do my work, that I went through a period of disconnect, of not only just losing my sense of direction and what am I going to do next, but it was my livelihood. Everything kind of just came to a stop. So I was forced to ask myself some hard questions. which again, I hadn't really done much in terms of meditation and journaling and just self-reflection work. Really, it was a foreign concept to me. As much as I would promote it, I would talk about living in this state of being and presence and mindfulness, but I wasn't actually practicing it. So when I started going through this period of recovering after my surgeries, and just I would sit in contemplation and ask myself, what am I good at? Why am I here? What does my service to others look like now? And I struggled with answering my own questions and providing that space for myself. So that first C was that compassion of self.
Yeah.
I hadn't really given myself that self-love and self-care up to that point. So it was kind of a new idea to hold myself in that space. And so realizing that, I was so much better in the space of others. So I thought, well, let me find out what other people have to say in regards to these same questions that I was struggling with. So I would meet with people. I would actually reach out to clients of mine who were just waiting for what's next in my work. And I'd say, hey, Edie, would you mind meeting me for coffee? I have some questions I want to ask you. And they'd be like, oh, what for? I'm like, I don't know, but I'm kind of experimenting with this whole interview question and answer idea that I'm just wanting to tap into. And so people would meet me, and I would come in with about 10, 12, 15 questions of, how would you define love? What does joy feel like? When were you last, when was a moment in your life where you were left speechless in awe? And I would just ask these simple questions and then give people that space to share. And I would just sit back and I would be in awe of what people would share. And they would transform in front of my eyes.
Wow.
And the more I did it, the more I would sit down with people. I would ask people the same questions, different people, the same 12 to 15 questions, but I would get so many different answers that just blew me away. That I was like, there's something here. There's something about this. And people would leave saying, God, that felt so good to be given that space to speak and to be open and honest and vulnerable and share things that in some cases they're like, I've never shared that before. So there was one client, if I can just tell this quick story.
Absolutely. Take your time.
I was going through some questions, and again, this was pretty early on. She was an older client of mine, a massage client. And we got to the end of her interview and she was in tears, like not tears of sadness, but just tears of just allowing herself to open up in a way that she really hadn't before. And so I was taking down my little microphone because I was recording these sessions and then giving the recordings back to them. Like, this is for you. This is your little legacy piece that I want you to keep and treasure. And so as I was cleaning up, she is wiping tears away, and she grabs my wrist as I'm cleaning up, and she's like, it just dawned on me what you're doing here.
Wow.
And I'm like, what is this?
Please tell me.
She's like, when I would be on your massage table, you just would instinctively know, just energetically know where to go. Your hands would just go right to the spot where I was in pain, and that basically my knots needed to be untied, and you just knew where to go. She says, what I feel right now is that your questions and the space that you just gave me helped untie knots in my heart and in my soul.
I love
and
that.
So she didn't see any difference between the massage work, the physical touch, and the energetic touch of the space that we created in that conversation. And so that was where, like, that's just when it became solid. Like, I have to do something with this now. And it was creating that bridge between the work that I had done for 2 decades that I wasn't even fully connected to at the time, to now seeing how that space of connection can be made just in conversation. When you hold that space, when you ask a good question, and when you just sit and listen and create conversation. It was revelatory to me in the sense that everything else from there, in terms of recording the content, transcribing the words, piecing it together and creating an outline. So this way we could build a story, putting these recordings together. It all just kind of happened very organically. And
Sounds like it.
when I would share with people what I do, like authors and even people in publishing who I've worked with, they would just be like, I've never heard of this before. I've never heard of this concept. I mean, dictation is common. People use that all the time, but it's this collaborative dictation. It's this collaborative space where I'm guiding you with questions and creating that conversation to blossom that story. And then to capture it in your own voice. So this way, you know, you don't have to sit down and write it all out. It was very organic in the way that it came together. And I'm learning more and more each day, trying new things. I've got a new piece to it now that I'm super excited about for the new year, that I want to help people tell and share their story in a really powerful way. And this is just a great way for me to give people that opportunity and do it in a unique, efficient, and powerful way.
And Gregg, there's so much I could say to all that, but I can definitely say that you have that intuitive component where you can also ask the right questions intuitively, but then also hold that space for people. And I think people really need that.
Yeah.
Especially these days. And I know that this really came to fruition right during the pandemic, maybe a little before, but then it kind of, and I apologize if you see my cat starting to wander across the screen here. That's my
You're fine.
arm out. Here he comes. And Gregg, I you know, even the little that I know you, I can just see that you can really hold that space for people, and for people to be able to really find their voice, let alone share their story, just finding their voice alone, I think, and feel like they're being heard is huge. And I think that people really need that. And I think that maybe you can, I'm sure, share more about this, but during the pandemic, didn't this really start to, did you come up with this idea during the pandemic, or was it a little bit before? And then I'd love to hear the new part too that you're thinking of. Yeah.
I call it a perfect storm that happened, because I was doing these interviews with clients pretty much most of 2019. I was spending that year just recovering from the surgeries, trying to find out what's next. I had dabbled a little bit in some coaching, just self-improvement, but nothing that was really focused on this piece. But there were elements of it, now that I think of it. It really wasn't until my first true, and I call her my first SpeakEasy client, was like towards the end of February of 2020. Wow. So this was just as the pandemic was becoming a thing and being talked about. And then it was soon after that, in March and April, that we went into lockdown. What I found was, during that period of isolation, like you said, I think people are hungry to speak.
Yeah.
I think we walk around thinking that, oh, nobody cares about me. I don't have much of a story. You know, I'm just going to stay over here and just be guarded. But I am just of the belief, and I've done enough of these to prove that if given the opportunity to be seen and heard and valued, that people are just, they're dying to speak.
Yeah. Right.
And so
exactly.
I was reminded of, and this quote came to me during the pandemic when I was really starting to have people reach out who, I've always wanted to write a book, and now I've got the time. I'm just at home kind of finding something to do. It gave them that creative outlet to focus on a story project that maybe they've been thinking about and wanting to work on for years, but just never really sat down at a computer to write, because it's hard, right? It's hard to sit down and to get everything energetically out onto your screen or on paper.
It is.
But if you ask somebody about their story, oh my gosh, I've had people just talk. I've asked one question. I've had clients where I've asked one question, and literally they talk for the hour. I just sit back and I'm just receiving. I'm just giving them that space. And so the quote that came to me that really just kind of encapsulates this whole idea of speakeasy for me it comes from George Washington Carver. He's a poet who said, "Anything will give up its secrets if you love it enough."
Oh my goodness, I love that quote.
And I'm just a big
Wow.
believer that that love, that act of
Mhm.
kindness through
Yeah.
that space of compassion, asking a good question, being curious, creating conversation,
Mm.
those three things for me just during the pandemic was I felt like it was the antidote to what we were going through.
Yeah,
It was what we all
absolutely.
wanted. We all want to be seen and heard and
Mhm.
valued. And so beyond just helping people with story projects, with books, with talks, with whatever it is you want to create, whatever your media that you want to create is,
Mhm.
you are the medium that creates
Mm.
that. But I
Mm.
think that
Love it.
more so on top of helping people with their story, I want to teach this method to people to hold that space for themselves, to hold
Mhm.
that space for your child or your loved one, or for
Mhm.
someone who you see as suffering. And that if you
Mhm.
apply all three of those pieces together, to
Mhm.
me, it is an act of kindness that I think can eliminate hate and stigma and polarization and a lot of just what we're dealing with mental health in this country. So it has become more and more clear to me that why I'm doing this is beyond publishing books or
Mhm.
getting people in front of an audience. It's beyond that. It's giving people an outlet to truly care for themselves, to strengthen their mindset, their heart,
Mhm.
to be able to hold that space for another person. And to me, I always say to people, like, what I do is so simple. You know, people like, you just ask people questions all day. I'm like, pretty much. And it's the greatest thing ever. It is
Yeah.
such, I feel at times like I should be paying you for the opportunity and the honor to be able to sit here and have you share your story with me, because
Mm. Wow.
I'm literally left in awe. And I've been using this idea of 2023 is going to be my year of awe. I want more
I
awe
love
moments in my
that.
life.
I love
And
that.
so I get that. I get to experience that with people, with complete
Mhm.
strangers.
Mhm.
And I just think that if people did that enough, if we did that enough for ourselves and each other, it would be transformative, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I feel like we all really need that. I feel like there's coming out of the pandemic, we're kind of coming into this space where we are reevaluating and even going back to square one, or like you were saying, in search of awe. Like we're in search of something different than what we came out of.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of chaos and there has been a lot of polarization, and so I think most people are looking for ways to connect on a deeper level with everything.
Right.
And we all could benefit from being more curious about one another versus you know falling into judgment, and having conversations is where you can develop when you realize that you share things in common. So I love when you mention that, Greg. And Greg, please let me know what your time frame is like here when you need, because you probably have other clients that you are working with today. So
I'm
let me
I'm I'm totally fine.
know. Okay,
Totally
awesome.
fine.
If someone, I just wanted to take like a brain break for everybody. If someone wanted to work with you, how would they get in touch with you?
Sure.
Just thought I'd put that out there at this moment.
Well, the easiest way to find me would be probably through my website, which is the Speakeasy Method.co. So just think Colorado abbreviated, which is where I'm at.
Okay.
www.thespeakeasymethod.co.
Mhm.
Little bit of about me, some testimonials, contact me, explains the process a little bit more about what I do. But
Mhm.
that's probably the best way for people to find me. I'm also
Okay.
available on LinkedIn, Facebook. Just look up Gregg Gonzales Speakeasy. You'll find me.
Nice. And yeah, and Greg and I met on LinkedIn. Not that everyone needs to know that, but I do like LinkedIn more and more. And I'm happy to, this is my only second broadcast ever on LinkedIn. And it's kind of fun, right? Like,
It is fun.
I know, well, yeah, we're in our own little studio here, but yeah, it's kind of, I'm really liking LinkedIn. And so Greg, when people, you were mentioning authors, stories, screenplays, would you want to go a little bit deeper into just how you would help someone if they are looking to, let's say, write a book
Sure.
or write a screenplay or even do a TED Talk? You mentioned TED Talk.
Right. So I always love to meet people who have a story idea And a lot of people will say, I've been having this idea for a book for years and just haven't done it. Or maybe I've started journaling, making some notes. I just love to just ask some simple questions of what's your story about? Just give me a premise of what is your story. And for a lot of people, they're wanting to talk about something about themselves. So it's very memoir focused. Not so much autobiographical, because with that, you're kind of telling your life story. And a lot of people don't want to tell their life story. They want to talk about maybe an experience or something that they learned in their life that they want to share. And so I would say for those people is if you know what your story is, if you can kind of explain your book, your story, and think of it in terms of like a subtitle, so you'll see a book that's maybe called Crooked is the title, which doesn't tell you a whole lot, but then the subtitle might be The Jagged Life of a, elementary school teacher. It could be something like that. So I always like to know kind of what is the subtitle or what is kind of the main, meaning
like
of the
main
story.
theme or
So I would always ask them that. Then I'd ask them why. Why do you want to tell your story? And for a lot of people, it's not a question they really think a lot about, but when you stop and ask them and give them that space, I'll say, be open. Do you want to make money? Do you want to get in front of an audience and speak and sell your book that way? Do you want to have it in a bookstore where you're signing books and having book launches? And, so I always like to know, like, what is driving you to do this? And for a lot of people, it's a sense of accomplishment. It's a bucket list item. It's creating legacy for a lot of people. It's just something that shows that I was here. And, a book is generational, so it gets passed down. Then I want to know who's it for. Describe to me who your ideal reader or audience member is. Like, describe him or her. What are they like? What do you want them to get from hearing your story? What is the transformation or the lesson or the takeaway? So I ask questions like this right at the get-go, because I really want to me, it's about investment, right? When someone wants to write a book, there's a lot of investment that goes into it. But I'm really focused on the time and the energy for people. The money is something that we can talk about. And I know for a lot of people, they get freaked out about how much it costs to publish a book. But I've even got some solutions for that. I just really want to understand really the why. Why do you want to do this? Why is this important to you? Because then that shows to me that at this early stage of kind of creation, we're really just kind of birthing this thing, right? So I actually worked with a client who she's a doula and wanted to tell her story about how she became a doula and really wanted it to be something that would be helpful for new parents and for expectant mothers. And so in the course of our first session, she joked with me. She's like, "You're like a story doula. Like, you just get things out of me, like with your questions and everything." So
that's awesome.
And so like birth, it's kind of messy and it can be painful and it can be kind of awkward. And so really what I help people do is kind of birth that story, bring it to life, create that foundation of a first draft that can eventually be polished into what the finished work will be. And I do that through my questions. So we generally start with just understanding, what is your story about? Who's it for? Why do you want to do it? Simple things like that. So I would just say for anyone out there who maybe you've got a story inside, maybe you've got a lesson that you want to pass on to your family, to friends and loved ones. Maybe it's something you want to share globally. And that could be through a blog, a book, a series, of whatever it is you want that message to get out there to be like, is to just understand those simple questions that for me is what we're going to keep going back to keep that energy and that flow going. Because I think for a lot of writers, they lose that momentum when they're kind of writing it themselves. Some writers, some authors can just go and they're very disciplined. Most people like myself are not that disciplined. So having that collaborative energy, that person who's kind of not only your cheerleader and your coach, but also someone who's going to hold you accountable.
Yeah,
is an important
absolutely.
piece too. So, so I would just say for anyone out there, like to understand, you know, what is the story about? Who's it for? Why do I want to do this? Why is it important to me? And that really kind of creates those pillars of where the story is going to go.
And I love how you talk about the story inside. I mean, I feel like everyone has many stories inside that want to get out, and but there might, you know, in terms of a book or screenplay or TED Talk, you know, there's the story, right, that you're trying to formulate. And I can only imagine, I am a writer, and it is very difficult to write a book. It took me 10 years to write my book, 10.
Yeah.
A lot of discipline. And I can only imagine it's so much easier to just talk, right? And have someone else take care of the, you know, like format, you know, putting it like where you
Putting
don't
it
have to
together.
worry about how you're, yeah, that's much easier. And you get to stay in the flow, and you get to be supported by someone. So that's
Correct.
amazing that you're offering that. And yeah, it's but I love that. I mean, story is so elemental, and that's what everybody, you and I were talking about this, and I know I keep bringing this up, Greg, but it's true. This is how people learn and connect and grow, and so many ways story. So
Well, and that's been a piece for me, is every time I
yeah.
meet with someone, I feel like I'm a wiser, better, kinder, more able to have more perspective, because again, it comes from not just asking the question, but receiving and listening.
Yeah.
And so
Right.
for me, it's healing for me as well. You know, I learn, I grow every time I meet with people. And it's fascinating for me to like get off a call. And similarly, like, again, back to my massage days, I would leave a session and just know, like, that was healing for both of us. We both
Yeah.
needed that, you know?
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of energy that's passed. There's a lot of that space that is created, but it can also be one of just a lot of give and take. And so that is the piece for me that it's kind of addictive. Like I love it to the point of I literally could do this all day. I could literally just
And you
meet
do.
with people one after the other and just ask
That's so
questions. I
great.
literally have a book of questions that if somebody wanted to, and I would love to challenge somebody if they ever want to do, and I do this, I do basically guided vocal journaling, where I just ask you random questions and just allow you the chance to just, what comes to mind? What's your
Wow.
answer?
Love that.
And it's basically kind of like that, answering that big question of who am I, right?
Yeah.
I'm fascinated each time I even do that, and just asking those simple questions for people that, you know, they don't really think about, but they know the answer is
Yeah.
there.
Right.
And what comes out is amazing.
And
Awe
wow.
moments. Yeah.
What was the last part you said?
It's those awe moments. It's
Those
just like,
awe moments. And yeah, and I was going to say also, it kind of sounds like when I think of journaling, when you're writing something down, you're tapping into your subconscious, or, you know, like the not conscious part of yourself, which is where a lot of the answers are, and kind of your emotional body is, spiritual body. So if you're having someone ask questions for you, I would only imagine you can tap into that.
yeah.
You know,
And
so
when that trust is felt, it's so funny
yeah.
you said that when you feel that trust and that feeling of being seen and heard, like we spoke about,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be a book project. It could literally just be that space that you give to someone to let them just understand who they are, what's going on with them, that it really does. It taps into a deeper element of that person. Another analogy that I use a lot with that side of this work is that when I see people as like icebergs, right? Above the surface, we only see about 10% of most people, sometimes less. I love to do this work with people because what we're doing is we're getting below the surface.
That's amazing.
You know, so I even think of what I do as like spiritual archaeology.
Oh,
And that
wow.
the questions that I ask help you dig deeper within yourself. And then what we're excavating is the gold. It's that answer to those questions that it may not, you know, in the moment, that's your answer today, but you could answer it in a week, a month, a year, and have a totally different answer to that same question But that's the point, right? Because we're always evolving, we're growing, we're learning. But in that moment today, that was your truth. That was where you were. And so I want to honor that with people. There are no right or wrong answers. It's just your answer. And that to me is part of what it fascinates me about this work.
Oh, and I could almost see that being like intuitive coaching, right?
Very much so.
Yeah, so it can be another way that someone can, even if they don't, like you said, want to, officially create a book. It sounds like just a huge opportunity to kind of check in, and again, we all need that. I think that, and feeling that sense of connection with ourselves and others. It sounds like a really fantastic way to do that. And I think that people are desperate for connection.
And I've done that too. I would say I spend the majority of my work on story projects per se, like on books and talks and things, but I also do connection coaching, doing exactly that. So just in thinking of a recent client who their struggle was within relationships with a partner, but it was really having to do specifically with attachment and just this feeling of just not being able to let go. And so I would put together questions that really focused on these specific themes that in a lot of cases, these were hard questions. These were not just light and fluffy, like, how do you define love? It was very much about that space that was given, that compassion really had to be there in order for them to feel trusting, but also stepping into that space of vulnerability to be honest with themselves. And what came out, I'm not coaching them. I mean, that's the part to me that I struggle with. Like people like, oh, you're a coach. I'm like, I just ask questions. You're kind of coaching yourself, I ask the question and I'm not even like probing you with the answer. Like I just allow it to just come. So very much like what you said, it's a lot of self-coaching. It's a lot of self-realization and self-discovery work that I just help kind of facilitate. But we focus on specific themes, so if someone's dealing with fear, anxiety, overcoming obstacles, it could be just, I can't get past myself to grow my business. So we'll get into why, what is it? What are the obstacles? Asking those questions that we know are hard to face for ourselves, but in this space with someone who cares, people will open up. It's kind of that quote again. People will share their secrets if they feel that love and that care is there. So again, this is not something that I just want to contain in this space with me and my client. I want this to be something that, it's like that ripple effect. Like I want you to learn the SpeakEasy method and now give it to someone else. Go ask somebody some good questions and give them that space. That to me is like the larger mission of this work, is to let this method become kind of a contagious energy where we're just holding space and asking good questions and creating conversations to transform lives.
Wow. I love that mission, that mission kind of vision. And so is that where you see this going?
I want to teach it. I want to teach it in schools. I want to get into high schools and middle schools and elementary schools and teach kids how to do the SpeakEasy method, the 3 C's. And I know we've talked before, one of my other favorite redefinitions is this idea of AI. And AI, for most people, they understand as artificial intelligence. But to me, AI is the secret sauce that makes the SpeakEasy method work. And so when I think of AI, it's attention and intention. And so when you are in this space with someone, how much attention are you putting into that conversation? Because we've all been on Zoom calls, right? Where someone's talking or you're in that call and you're distracted and you're thinking to yourself, oh my God, I'm hungry. And, I've had those moments, right? But when you are present and your attention is fully there, that person on the other side can feel that. Okay. So that attention has to be there. But then the intention, it's the attention is the thought, the intention is the feeling. Like, what does it feel like when someone shares their painful life experience of this traumatic event that turned their life upside down? there's a relatability and a connectivity to it that I may not have been there, but I understand it. I feel it, you know? So it's the intention of that space and that conversation that happens, that when those two things are together, your attention and intention, along with the 3 C's, that's magic. That is literally the recipe for magic. And so when I talk to people, even my own kids, I will say AI is the secret to happiness. No matter what you're doing, you could be brushing your teeth, you could be doing your homework, you could be watching a show, you could just be sitting in conversation with friends. Is how much attention and intention are you putting into those things?
Yeah.
And it takes that simple act of brushing your teeth, of drinking a glass of water, of having a conversation with a dear friend, to a whole nother level.
Yeah.
When you are thinking and feeling it in the moment. And I know people are like, brushing your teeth. What? Like, try it. Like, I challenge everyone out there to like put AI into brushing your teeth and tell me how much better that experience is than just mindlessly doing it without giving it much thought. Like, feel the bristles on your teeth, feel the taste of the toothpaste, feel the water, you know, as you're rinsing. Like, the whole experience, I know it sounds ridiculous. Like, this to me is the key to finding and sustaining joy in our lives. Like, if we just apply more AI to everything, driving, I mean, it's changed the way that I drive. You know,
Really?
I don't want to say that I drive, you know, in a constant state of Zen, but like, I'm thinking and feeling every aspect as much as I can to bring about these moments of awe. You know, when I go for a walk, I am constantly in a state of awe of like right now we had a foot of snow just fall last night, and I'm just seeing the trees covered in white, and just, it's so quiet and peaceful, and it's like this beautiful, like, it looks like whipped cream. On a normal day, I'm like, oh, I got to go shovel, which I did, but I could actually do it and just be like, look at how beautiful this is.
How beautiful.
You know, and just how lucky I am to experience this and to feel this. And so again, I there's so many layers to what I do. And when I talk about it, that I get kind of lost myself. But at the end of the day, it's kindness of self, kindness to others, attention and intention, and the 3 C's. That's what I want to teach people and show people.
Well, and Greg, I think that you have so many gifts, and you really do hold space for people, I think, profoundly well. I can see that in you. And that's huge right there. And I think that the concept of, you know, kind of flipping AI on its head, you know, artificial intelligence is literally coming out now with like creating content. And honestly, I think that's the last thing that we need because we need people creating content. We need the soul behind it. We need the intention behind it. And so I love how you flip it into, and you know, instead of artificial intelligence, I think we need less artificial at this point. We've gone way too far up into the, you know, tech netherworld here. You know, bringing it back to being mindful and present, creating that attention, and then intention. I think that's brilliant. And I think that we really are, I think people are coming out of the pandemic, and it was very stressful. And that's probably why there was a lot of tension, and we're feeling the effects of that still, but we're also craving something deeper. And I think that deeper level is a sense of unity, connection, and it's just a question of how do we get there. And I appreciate what you're saying and what your gifts are, because I feel like that's a huge part of it. So
thank you.
So thank you for sharing all your gifts, Greg. And I'm very happy that I met you. And I really like your Christmas tree, by the way.
1 more week. I think it's coming down soon, but yeah.
And this is not real in the background, by the way. I do wish that my home looked like this, but it does a little bit.
I wouldn't even tell people that. I would just let people just be in awe of your beautiful space. This is my living room.
No, I'm kidding.
I love it. I do have a ask to play your piano sometime.
I do have a baby grand, but it's not usually propped like that. But well, no. So Greg, and again, I want to respect your time, but is there anything that you you feel like we didn't talk about that you want to share, or any highlights or recaps? Is there anything that you feel like is still left unsaid that you'd like to share with people?
You know, I could spend hours saying all the things that
Probably
are
me
unsaid.
too.
I really think as far as my takeaway and what I really want people to, again, hopefully if you just lasted till the end of the recording, to just take away is to be kind to one another, you know. And I think that for me, that with so much of what's been going on in society and over the last several years through the pandemic, and just even now, I feel like with a new year approaching, that if we just applied a little bit more attention and intention to ourselves and to others, to other human beings, and just if we were just more kind, I think that's just my final takeaway, is to just ask yourself each day, how can I be kind to myself? And it could be something as simple as just, I'm going to eat better today. I'm going to move my body a little bit more. I'm going to nourish my mind by reading a book or learning something new, maybe volunteering my time. It could be any number of things that could be your act of kindness that you could do for yourself and others. That to me, if everyone just did one thing each day, then I think we would astound ourselves with what we could do and how we could really transform our lives and the lives of others and just make the world a better place. So I think it's just a final message is just that. It's just one small act of kindness for yourself and others each day. Mine is doing what I do. This is my contribution from myself, because it's something that I love to do, but it's also something that I feel there is a need to provide people that space. But find what yours is. And if anyone has questions, who's ever wanted to think about getting a story told, you know, whether it's a book, a talk, a blog, maybe it's just some self-discovery work. I love to meet people. Like I said, people fascinate me. So I do discovery calls all day long, and I love meeting new people and just getting to know them and answering their questions, and they get to answer some of mine. So
and everybody, Gregg is really good at discovery calls and beyond. He's a wonderful person.
thank
So
you.
I really appreciate you being here, Gregg, and I'm really happy that I met you. And thank you everybody for listening. So Gregg, I'm sure I'll talk to you behind the scenes and beyond the streams, the live streams.
That sounds great. Thank you so much, Edie.
Being here. My pleasure. Yeah, and thanks everybody for listening. And we'll talk to you all soon. On beyond the screen and online and beyond. So, okay. All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everybody. Bye, Gregg.